There was a rather silly news story attracting attention in recent weeks in Australia after a former government minister, Prue Garland, wrote a really nasty newspaper article claiming men who greet women with a kiss on the cheek are indulging in a masculine power play, dominating behaviour intended as a put down. She wrote about women gagging when men dare to plant their bacteria-ridden saliva and unflossed breath on women's shrinking cheeks. Really horrible stuff, particularly when you consider this woman was in charge of big government departments like community services and domestic violence. Her anti-male bias was abundantly on display. But what was really telling was the whole article was framed in terms of protecting women by teaching girls to say no to unwanted advances. Protecting women and girls, but naturally there was not one word about protecting boys or men. Now, my guest today knows all about the influence of feminists like Prue Garland on government policy. His name is Christopher Vogel. Hi, Christopher. I'll actually call you Kit, won't I? That's your nickname. Nice. Yeah. Kit's now actually a teacher who's just finished a master's degree looking at the bias against boys in the child protection course, which is taught in schools in his state, which is South Australia. Your thesis, Kit, was called "Does the Australian Child Protection Curriculum Present Gender in a Fair and Equitable Way?" Well, what's the answer, Kit?
The answer is an emphatic no.
Yeah.
I've got 19,000 words demonstrating without any shadow of a doubt that it does not present gender in a fair and equitable way.
Kit, you got interest in this topic when you were being trained as a teacher. Can you tell me about how that happened?
Okay, there are quite a number of things that you have to fulfill to be a teacher. You have to get a police check and demonstrate you can read and write. And do a response to abuse and neglect training. One of them that we thought was compulsory, but apparently it wasn't, was the child protection curriculum training, which is something that's done in Australia from kindergarten up to year 12.
Yeah.
And I sat through that training and I asked a few questions because I thought it was particularly boy bashing. And a couple of other people asked questions as well. And when I got out, I asked two other of my teacher friends who had been to different sessions, and they said, yeah, we also asked those questions because we thought it was boy bashing. And for my masters, I thought, well, you can suffer from selective attention, and you can say, well, was it really boy bashing, or was I just convincing myself that? And I thought one way to test this would be to actually sit down and study it and see if it is boy bashing.
Yeah. And that's what you did your research on.
Yes.
Yeah. And you've ended up finishing that master's thesis, and you got a high distinction, which is good to hear.
Yes,
so obviously you got something right. Now, so what we're talking about is it's a course that's taught throughout the public schools in South Australia, essentially a child protection course, mandatory for all state schools in your state, and there's equivalent sort of courses around Australia.
It's also taught in Catholic schools and Anglican schools.
And it's essentially focused around tell me about that, the right to be safe in relationships.
Oh, it talks about boundaries and personal space and secrets. It's broken up into 5 different age groups, the pre-kindy ones, 2 for primary school and 3 for high school.
Yeah.
And it changes its topics as it goes up. As they're not going to be talking about sex with the kindergartners, but they are going to be talking about it with the 9s to 12s.
Okay. I should say about your thesis, you were lucky with your supervisor, male supervisor, who actually sought you out when he realised what you were proposing to look at, to do research on. And he was a guy who was actually doing his own research into gender bias in education. Tell me what he was doing, what he was looking at.
Well, he was alerted to certain discrepancies in the South Australian Certificate of Education. And he also wanted to see if it was true or not, because one can be made to believe things that may not necessarily be true. So he and his team did research, I think, into the last 4 or 5 years of the Certificate of Education, and found that our SACE board is giving twice as many high distinctions to girl students as it is to boy students.
Yeah. And that's, of course, something happening across Australia as well. We're seeing this increasing imbalance in terms of women, girls absolutely acing all the top results, aren't they?
Well, we were discussing that during our teacher training, that they'd introduced a section into all the science courses called SHE, Science is the Human Endeavour, and it seems to be designed to make the sciences less sciencey and more like an English subject.
Yeah. Write about your favourite physicist.
Yes, actually.
That's right. Yeah, it's crazy stuff. That's happening everywhere too. Anyway, so you were very lucky. You had this guy supervising you who appreciated the research you were proposing to do and who protected you to some extent. And I have men all over the place who have had real trouble getting their degrees, getting their PhDs because of bias in their supervisors. So that was you really did well.
I lucked out there.
Yeah, lucked out there. The curriculum went through an update in 2017 because of the national plan to reduce violence against women and children and their children, which always really annoys me, since when are women's property. Anyway, that ended up making this whole program even more anti-male. Is that right?
Yes.
We've actually got a graph of the fact that showing when it was introduced. Tell me about the sort of changes that were made as a result of that.
Well, it's odd that in the first edition, the handbooks reference the 1 in 3 website, where it's pointing out that men are victims of domestic violence.
Yeah.
And that was sliced out in the second edition to comply.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, then we should explain a bit more about that. We've got this wonderful website called 1in3.com, and that's run by a group of professionals pointing out that males certainly can be victims. A significant numbers of victims of domestic violence are male, and yeah. So you're saying that fact, the fact that at least a third of the victims of violence, according to Australian statistics, are male, was in the first edition and removed as a result of this new push looking at the current policies on domestic violence.
They also included a big section in the introduction of the teacher training, which actually states in more or less these words that virtually no domestic violence occurs towards men and boys. And if it does, then it's really not that serious anyway. And it says that in the introduction, which biases everything from then.
It says the overwhelming majority of acts of domestic violence are perpetrated by men against women, etc., etc. So that showed a whole new slant that was even more likely to paint males as the villains.
Yeah. They also almost doubled the number of male aggressors and halved the number of female aggressors in the second edition.
Yeah.
What else did they do?
And you said, so the introduction to the training course uses language which is directly taken from some of our advocacy groups. We've got advocacy groups. One of them is called Our Watch, which is a big government-sponsored propaganda unit promoting the idea that all domestic violence is perpetrated by males on females. And that's what they take language from those websites and use it in this curriculum. Is that right? We've got an example of that.
That's correct. It's also concerning when I went to research this on the Department for Education's website. They've actually got the White Ribbon Foundation as a logo on the bottom of their website, which is very concerning because the White Ribbon Foundation was embroiled in a bit of a financial scandal a few years ago. Because they're registered as a charity, they're required to put their where their money goes up online, accessible, and 80% of their money, $5.5 million, goes on executive salaries, flights, hotels, and offices.
Yeah.
They spend exactly zero on shelters, research, and counselling.
Yeah. Well, this is another organisation whose sole goal is to misrepresent what's happening with regard to domestic violence. White Ribbon recruits men, appeals, is aimed at appealing to men to protect women from violence. That's its only area of violence it's interested in. It has consistently refused to even mention male victims. We've all been fighting them for years. And of course, white ribbons out there as official sponsors in government organisations across the country, including this one, the Department of Education. Yeah?
Yes, that's very concerning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, go on.
Yes. On one of my placements, because I still wasn't certain that I was going to research this, but on one of my placements for teaching, they did a white ribbon week for the whole school where they had big wooden cutouts of white girls in white dresses. And the head of the religious education was doing it, introduced it in the chapel. And he put his hands up like this and said, all right, I know that a number of you have come to me and said, what about the male victims? But I want you to stop your whining. We're talking about domestic violence.
Yeah.
And
so there were no males, or if there were any males, I assume they were dressed in black, were they?
No males were allowed to be shown as domestic violence victims on the Domestic Violence Week.
We should mention that this whole curriculum is authored by 9 women from within the Department of Education and no men. So you can see where the bias is coming from. Now we want to go through some of the specific examples and topics covered in this curriculum, which, explicitly portray males and boys as abusers and women as innocent victims. I'm going to put some of these up on the screen so people can see them, and you can talk us through them. So we've got a whole lot of examples here, which we've marked in green, which is all about men doing something to, a man hitting my mum, that sort of thing. Could you want to go through a few of these examples for us?
Okay, there are, over the course of the 600 odd pages of workbooks, they present over 80 examples of males aggressing towards females. Yeah. And they range from child abuse, child rape, sexual assault, regular assault, bullying, really sexist, vicious stuff from the males in these characters. And I've provided you just some examples there of the sorts of aggression that we're talking about from males aggressing against females. In all 5 workbooks, there is a single instance of a female aggressing towards male, and that is a hypothetical sub-question concentrated on boys bullying other boys. And it's the question, what if Jack was being bullied by a gang of girls? That's the only instance in all 5 workbooks of females aggressing.
And there are dozens of examples of the sort of things we're seeing here, where mother's being hit by a man, or a male relative threatening a friend, or a man entering a girl's bedroom, and so on. And you've only shown us a small sample of the numerous examples like that.
Yes, tiny sample. My supervisor stated up front that this was going to be gone through with a fine-tooth comb, and that I'm going to have to be very careful and dot all my I's and cross all my T's. And so I chose very robust, very accepted systems for analysis. And I performed a frequency analysis, a transactional analysis, and latent class analysis, which is a highfalutin way of saying I counted up every single gendered term, assigned them into established categories, victim, aggressor, carer, and stand-in, and see if there were any patterns that turned up. I think you've got this figure 417 from my thesis, which was the portrayal of cross-gender aggression by year group.
Yeah, we can see that, yeah.
And it's got boys aggressing towards girls at dramatically increasing rates as the years go on. And only 2 instances, one in years 3 to 5 and one in years 10 to 12, of girls aggressing towards boys. But that's not entirely accurate. I was being generous. The 10 to 12 year group is the victim is someone who is called Sam. Sam is never mentioned by gender. Yeah. So technically, it's just one instance of females aggressing towards males in the entire 600 pages.
Okay. And the little boys aren't nearly as bad as those horrible big boys.
Yes. Apparently, you can only really start bashing males when they're starting to go through puberty and feeling very self-conscious about being males.
Yeah.
It's in fact the worst possible time to be sinking the boot in.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, and then we've got this same gender aggression.
Oh yeah, this was also interesting. Most of the girls that I've talked to, and most of my friends are girls, say that girl-on-girl aggression at school is vicious, and that they were portraying the girl-on-girl aggression as getting less and less as you got further towards years 10 and 12.
Which no school teacher would ever agree with. I mean, any high school teacher would acknowledge that playgrounds full of girls are very dangerous places. And particularly, I mean, what I'm interested, when that we talk about abuse, we're including verbal abuse, emotional abuse, are we? Not just physical.
Yes. Yeah, all the counts on this. The reason why I counted the and what if the boy was being bullied by a group of girls is because that counts as an aggression in the transactional analysis.
Yeah. So
someone saying you're fat or
So go on, you go. So yeah, that's right. So I mean, it's always struck me as really weird because of course, the feminists have been very keen to expand the definition of violence, of aggression, in every way possible to include particularly psychological abuse, emotional abuse, and so on. And yet, if we thought for 1 minute about it, we'd realise girls are past masters at emotional abuse. We know exactly how to get up to press people's buttons, to really irritate our friends if that's what we're trying to do, to make a girl feel. Yeah, there's hundreds of novels about what happens between teenage girls. There's lots of studies of bullying between girls, and yet this whole project on child protection totally misrepresents what's going on, doesn't it?
This was a big eye-opener for me because we've all been told that feminism is about equality. But when you look at intimate partner violence, they're not looking after the male victims. And so it could be argued that feminism is about helping women. But the most prevalent relationships for domestic violence are lesbian relationships, and they don't want to acknowledge those either.
Yeah.
So it seems to be primarily concerned with hurting men.
Yeah, and I'm not on top of the research, but I would imagine in terms of bullying between girls in adolescence in school settings is probably just as prevalent, if not much more so, than physical bullying between boys.
Yeah, I think so. It's less visible.
Less visible, yeah. But the isolating girls, the defriending of girls, the use of the internet to make girls feel, bad. We hear about that all the time. How come it's not reflected in these figures?
That's true.
Yeah. Next graph you've got is frequency of aggressor or victim by gender. Can you explain that?
That was fascinating. Females were portrayed as the victim in the overwhelming majority of cases, more than twice the number of cases. But I'm going to start from the middle there, the male victims. Males were bullied by other boys or by neutral. And by neutral, I mean the text would say, somebody hit a boy. So the somebody is a...
Yeah.
With the female victims, females are very rarely portrayed as being bullied by other females, when I believe that's the most common form of female victimization. Then by neutral, and then 84 times over the course of the 5 texts by boys and men.
Yeah.
Which is, my understanding, not at all what the facts should state.
Yeah. So this is a total misrepresentation of what we know to be the discussion around bullying in schools, your own experience as a teacher, your what other teachers tell you about what's going on. Most extraordinary thing that these educators take it upon themselves to present such an ideologically driven, biased view of what's actually going on.
It was odd. While I was at one of the schools, they brought in an outside contractor to teach the students about the dangers of alcohol and drugs. And I sat in at the back because it was taking up one of my lessons and just took notes. And over the course of the hour that he was talking to the students, he called boys idiots and morons about 16 times.
No.
And at the end of it, he laughed and he said, you know, I've been really bashing the boys a fair bit. And I know that if I say anything against girls, they'll arc up and fight back. But the boys will just sit there and take it. I thought, yeah, they're habituated to being belittled. That's not a good thing. It's not something to laugh at.
That's right. And so, but what we're essentially talking about here is a program designed to protect children from abuse. And the whole program is set up to imply that this only happens to girls. We only have to protect girls. Now, what was interesting to me is the great irony is this program is dedicated to a very famous South Australian, a woman called Freda Briggs, who's a child advocate, worked for many years in child protection. And she was really outspoken about the fact that a lot of the child education protection courses are neglecting the needs of boys. Tell me about that.
That was a big eye-opener for me. That formed the backbone of my Viva, where I defended my thesis to the school. Even Freda Briggs, whom the curriculum was dedicated to, was stating child protection curriculums are not looking after boys. They present domestic violence and sexual assault as only affecting girls, and the boys don't see it as affecting them. They get violently sexually abused, and they think, well, it can't be sexual abuse because I'm not a girl.
Yeah.
And they don't come forward, or when they do come forward, they're told to stop whining, or that it only happens to girls, or that they should be happy that it happened to them. And then they shut up. There's a very famous relationship therapist called Warren Farrell, and he wrote a book called Women Can't Hear What Men Don't Say.
Yeah.
And he says, very often men come forward, they say it once, they get told to shut up, and then they don't say it again.
Yeah. Well, the great irony is this, of course, this used to apply to all children when it came to child sexual abuse, that we didn't tend to believe children, that children weren't heard. And everyone's terribly ashamed of that now. We have to believe what children tell us. We have to listen to them. But that only applies to girls. I mean, boys, as you say, boys can report this is happening to them and have it totally disregarded. They are now shamed into thinking they can't confess it to anybody because they'll be seen as weird or, they'll be to blame for the abuse. It is the most extraordinary thing what we're doing to boys in this system, isn't it?
Yes, it's horrific. We're meant to be protecting them, and we're actually making their lives more difficult and making them about themselves. And
it's interesting to me that how it's been really obvious in Australia how at risk boys are of sexual abuse, because we've recently had a Royal Commission into institutional abuse, and a hell of a lot of the victims were male. And we saw boy after boy, grown up now, men talking about their experiences when they were boys, where they were abused by all sorts of people, whether it was, the Catholic priest or the teacher in a school, or, the scout leader, whatever it was. And I thought it was intriguing that this was paraded in the news every day, these horrific stories, and how rarely anyone ever talked about the fact of how many victims were male.
I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop because they haven't started investigating nuns. They're only investigating priests.
What I think is really important is the conclusions you drew in your thesis, that we have this extraordinarily anti-male curriculum. What do we do about it? How should we tackle this?
Well, I've got to stress at this point that big chunks of the curriculum are actually okay. It's just where males and females are interacting with one another. Primarily intimate partner violence and sexual assault. Those ones are really bad. But a lot of the other stuff is good. And I think I've actually got, and I should tell you this, I've been called into a meeting with the Department for Education tomorrow to actually discuss my thesis.
Yeah.
Because I actually stated in the conclusion that I don't know where the bias is coming from, whether that was imposed upon them by the National Action Plan to Eliminate Violence Against Only Women and Their Children, or whether it's internal, or whether it's well-intentioned and misunderstood, whether they just don't know the facts. So I'll be talking with them tomorrow. Fingers crossed, hope that works.
Well, I'm glad you're telling us where you're going so that if you never re-emerge, we know what's happened to you.
Okay. I will leave a trail of breadcrumbs.
Yeah, that's right.
The things I recommended was that first of all, we need to have the language changed. We can't have, when someone abuses someone, he should be, things like that. That language needs to be changed. We need to include boys in the victims, and we need to include girls in the perpetrators.
Yeah.
I also suggested that they maybe have on board a boys liaison officer inside, because it doesn't look like anyone's got boys' welfare in mind when they're writing things. I mean, it would be a nice juxtaposition with the Officer for the Status of Women.
Yeah.
Somebody who's there to look through things and say, guys, this is, a little bit biased. That could be tremendously useful.
Yeah.
Also, maybe a section on pregnancy from the boys' point of view. I actually sat through a thesis where somebody said, I looked at pregnancy from every point of view, the mother's and the child's. And being a new father at the time, I thought, there's a third person involved in a pregnancy.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But just what it might be like to lose contact with your child, or to not have a say in whether the child lives or dies, or to have your child taken away from you and raised by somebody who you don't think is a good person.
Yeah.
These are things that are just not covered. And if you make the thing about pregnancy something that the boys can actually see themselves in the picture of, they may change their attitude about some things.
Yeah. One of the other things you mentioned is, they recommend resources which are, party line feminism, not remotely evidence-based, and it'd be good to see some proper evidence in the research that they're recommending.
Yes, yeah, I've got to say, the resources on non-domestic violence and non-sexual abuse stuff, that's fine. It's just on those ones are just dreadful, utterly inappropriate.
Yeah. And there's this idea that, as we've said, that boys can be laughed at if they're being abused. And there's nothing to say to tell boys and girls that this shouldn't be happening, that boys should be listened to and helped and treated sympathetically if they're victims of abuse.
Yes, that is a big empathy gap. And I actually did my my main talk for my undergraduate teaching degree on the empathy gap, on including boys in the scope of empathy.
Yeah, yeah.
That's really good. And that, I think, segues nicely into the next bit, which is, I gave that talk on the empathy gap and on including boys and helping them out when they're in need. And about 8 or 9 of the other master's students came up to me afterwards and said, that had never occurred to me. And the information that you've shown actually makes sense. And I should bear in mind that boys also need help. So I think the tide of the student teachers that I was going through with has changed a bit.
Yeah. Well, this is the hope that we've got a younger generation now. And I see it with a number of young women who contact me. There are a lot of people who are really appalled at how anti-male our whole society has become. And they're beginning to speak out about it, as you found, in that you said some of the other teachers have reported that, in the teacher training, that this new generation is a feisty lot, and they're challenging some of the feminist ideology that has just been part and parcel of this curriculum for so long. Anyway, Kit, very nice to talk to you. Thank you for telling us about what is really important work.
Thank you very much.
Thanks everybody for supporting me on my YouTube channel. I've got growing numbers of subscribers, which is really exciting. If you'd like to support me financially, go to my donate page on my website. Thanks a lot.